From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The United Nations Security Council has rejected a draft resolution on Venezuela presented by the United States. The result of the vote was 9 in favor, 3 against, and 3 abstentions. But the resolution fell because 2 permanent members, Russia and China, exercised their veto. South Africa also voted against the resolution. The U.S. resolution called for immediate presidential elections in Venezuela and unrestricted access for so-called aid.
The result of the voting is as follows. Votes in favor, 9. Votes against, 3. Abstentions, 3. The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Council.
A second vote took place on a draft resolution submitted by Russia. 4 member states voted in favor, 7 against, and 4 abstained. So this resolution also fell. The Russian motion called for a peaceful political solution to the situation in Venezuela. It backed the Montevideo mechanism to promote dialogue between the Bolivarian government and the opposition. The Russian ambassador to the UN spoke following the vote, maintaining support for Venezuela's internal dialogue.
This is a decision to be taken by the Venezuelan people themselves. Do not decide for them. Most important is dialogue, and you are literally and figuratively burning down bridges. Our document contained support for the Montevideo mechanism. However, dialogue and mediation clearly are not what Washington and those delegations supporting it are not what they are aiming for.
And during the press conference after the Security Council vote, the Venezuelan ambassador to the UN said that claims made by the Colombian government of hundreds of defectors from the Bolivarian armed forces are false, and said that the EU is taking part in colonialist project in Latin America.
That they are arming what so-called Venezuelan Liberation Army to penetrate into Venezuelan territory with supposedly deserters. They are saying that right now there are thousands of Venezuelan deserters, and it's absolutely not true. They are inflating those figures because they are fabricating their own Contra army, exactly the same like they did in Nicaragua during the 80s. This is a very serious and grave denunciation. This is a project of recolonization of Latin America because they are not just going after Venezuela. They are saying openly that they are going after Nicaragua, after Cuba, after Bolivia, after Suriname. I mean, they have a list of countries. And what has that meant to do with our constitution and our legitimacy? The legitimacy of our government and our powers is given by the people of Venezuela, you see? And he doesn't understand that. Rule Italy and rule Europe. We respect that, but don't rule Venezuela. They are colonialists, and we denounce that.
The ambassador also responded to questions on opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido, who declared himself interim president while exercising virtually no control over the country's institutions.
Could you be more specific? Were you referring to the National Assembly,
yeah,
which does have a basis
I'm talking about the fictional entity is not the National Assembly, which we recognize. The fictional entity is this president, which now is the president of everything, is the president of the National Assembly, is the president of the Supreme Court, is the president of the executive power. It doesn't recognize any other power in Venezuela, just the power of the United States. It's a fictional entity, you know why? Because it doesn't control one single police car in Venezuela, doesn't control one single street in Venezuela, but more than that, it doesn't exist in our constitution, as simple as that. Their time ran out on the 23rd of January and February. They had 1 month to call elections, and now they are saying that they are unable and unwilling to call elections, meaning that they are a dictator and they pretend to stay there indefinitely. This is a dictatorship outside our constitution. It's a fictional entity.
On Thursday, Venezuelan opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido met with far-right Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Guaido is trying to drum up regional support for his ongoing coup against the government of President Nicolás Maduro. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Meir, has more.
Today in Brasilia, President Jair Bolsonaro received a visit from Juan Guaido, the self-proclaimed leader of the Venezuelan opposition. The two men met for less than an hour, and apparently they spoke about democracy, which is ironic because afterwards, when Guaido met with the president of the Senate, a senatorial staff member called him a coup-monger, and he was physically dragged out of the building, to the boos and insults made by members of Bolsonaro's ruling coalition. What's interesting about the visit, however, is that the top generals snubbed Guaido's visit. And these are the same generals who Mauro Lopes, Brazilian journalist, recently argued are the ones who are actually running Brazil. After all, it was General Mourão who announced at the Lima Group earlier this week that Brazil would not allow the US government to use Brazilian territory as a takeoff point for any military incursion into Venezuela. And it was announced in Folha do São Paulo newspaper that there's a split in Bolsonaro's ruling coalition as to whether they should even support Trump or not on this initiative. And this is why they only sent 2 small pickup trucks to the Venezuelan border with so-called humanitarian aid last Saturday. So not only did nobody from the military meet with Guaido, Brazilian Congressional President Rodrigo Maia also snubbed him.
We thank Brian for that report. The government and the opposition in Nicaragua have defined a roadmap that will guide the dialogue that resumed on Wednesday after a year of political unrest. Representatives of the government and the opposition agreed on 9 out of the 12 points in the agenda after 7 hours of talks. The second day of talks is currently underway. Our correspondent in Managua, Maria Jose Diaz, has more.
The negotiation table between the government and the opposition started on Wednesday. In a press conference by representatives after the first day of talks, they say the parties work in defining a plan for negotiations. 9 out of 12 points proposed were reportedly approved. However, they haven't yet announced an agenda about the topics they will discuss. On Thursday, both sides are continuing the talks in an attempt to resolve the political crisis that started back in April 2018. The international community has supported these talks, as it do the majority of Nicaraguans who want peace and an economic recovery.
It's now 8 months since the failed coup in Nicaragua. Although the civil and political unrest is over, social and economical scars are still apparent. For ordinary Nicaraguans like Amanda, peace talks are the only way forward.
I have faith that the negotiation will go well. All Nicaraguan families and the young want peace. We want to triumph and move forward.
According to analyst Adolfo Pastran, it would be a big mistake for the opposition to pursue their all-or-nothing policy, as they did last year, which caused a catastrophic political crisis.
These people have already spoken in the past about the economy and the laws. They are known to the government. The government has already negotiated with the opposition, especially with businessmen. The most important thing about the talks is there aren't any conditions. So over the next few weeks, they should go smoothly.
The first round of talks took place in the morning at Francisco de Sola Inque in Nicaragua. By the afternoon, they had approved 9 of the 12 points of the peace negotiation.
In this first session, all parties approved a peace plan, and 9 of the initial 12 points were approved for peace talks.
The second round of peace talks will continue on Thursday.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome. Ecuador's indigenous Waurani community in the Amazon region have filed a lawsuit against the Ecuadorian government to protect their ancestral land from an oil auction. The lawsuit alleges that the government has violated the Guaranos people's rights to self-determination, identity, and territory. In 2018, the state announced an auction of 16 new oil concessions covering nearly 7 million acres of primary forest, including in the Waurani territory. They say the government failed to consult them before offering their lands in the Pastaza region to the highest bidding oil company.
Our land is full of life. Inside the jungle there are sacred animals, our river and our community, and that's what we want to protect. Our land is our life. Without our land we cannot live. We are here, all community members together, to speak up. Many other communities came to support us. We are going to ask for our right, and we hope they listen to us and respect us. Respect our lives. Our land is not for sale.
And earlier we were joined by Michelle Anderson, the Executive Director of Amazon Frontlines, who has been supporting the Waorani campaign for many years. He said that the Ecuadorian government has taken away the community's rights, even though they are protected under the Constitution.
The Ecuadorian government is attempting to sell off the rights to extract oil in their lands, all in pursuit of, really the last drops of oil in a remote rainforest that's highly biodiverse and, that the Waorani people have been the guardians of for thousands of years. In legal terms, what the Waorani are saying is, you violated our right to free, prior, and informed consent, you violated our right to collective territory, to self-determination, and you've also violated the rights of nature, which is a really important policy that the Ecuadorian government enshrined in their constitution years back, and the Ecuadorian government in its pursuit of oil is continuing to violate that right.
Michelle also talked about the demands of the Waorani community, saying they are asking for respect and a favorable ruling that can be used as an example for the protection of indigenous communities.
First and foremost, the Waorani are demanding respect and dignity. They want the world, the Ecuadorian government, the oil companies, the ministries, and the people around the world to respect their way of seeing and thinking and feeling and living in their forest. That's at its core, at its heart, what this struggle is all about. You heard Namonte Ninkimo, who's the elected leader of the Waorani people of Pastaza and the 16 villages that are filing this lawsuit, say that our land is our life. And what they want is for their life and their land to be respected. Concretely, what the Waorani want from this lawsuit is for the Pastaza provincial judge to rule in their favor and basically say that yes, it's true, the Ecuadorian government, in attempting to auction off the Waorani people's land to the oil companies, has violated the right to consultation, to free, prior, and informed consent, violated the right to self-determination.
And staying in Ecuador, former President Rafael Correa has rejected President Lenín Moreno's allegations that he is orchestrating a political campaign against his administration. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, reports.
In a televised message, Ecuador's President Lenín Moreno denied accusations made against him and his family. He said he didn't bullshit an empowerment in Spain and blamed the former President Rafael Correa for this smear campaign.
This is a strategy to undermine the country, conducted by former President Rafael Correa, who caused the biggest moral, economic, and social debacle that Ecuador has ever experienced.
The member of the National Assembly who made the accusations against Moreno and his relatives in Ecuador and Spain took to social media to condemn acts of violence outside a hotel in Guayaquil where he was going to hold a press briefing.
Unfortunately, people apparently close to the government, bad people, blocked my way into the hotel. And as you can see, they were carrying stones and had their faces covered. The police did nothing. They attacked the media. We hold the government responsible for my security.
Moreno's presidential message has provoked mixed reactions. For Vigilio Hernández of the Citizen Revolution movement, Moreno seems to be worried and is looking for a way to distract the attention of the public.
The president didn't answer the accusations. That's the main thing. He looked nervous and isolated. This is important because we see there is a political vacuum around the president and a complete absence of answers.
For his part, Rafael Correa insists the country will know the truth about President Moreno, and a number of political and social movements are warning that demands to revoke his presidential mandate will increase. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
Moving on, a devastating fire in Colombia has destroyed more than 800 hectares of forest, several indigenous communities, and their plantations on the mountain range of Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. The indigenous Arhuaco community, say Niming, was burned to the ground by the massive fire that lasted several days. It also destroyed ancestral territories of the Kogi people, leaving at least 200 families without a home.
We are in mourning because our resources burnt down. As indigenous people, we live from the fields and the animals. Now we don't have anything. All 4 ethnicities that live in the Sierra Nevada are affected. We were suppliers for 3 different departments. We asked President Ivan Duque for help to reestablish our community.
Former Argentine President Carlos Menem has been acquitted in the bombing against the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires in 1994. 85 people died and hundreds were injured in the attack. Menem was accused with his intelligence chief of staging a cover-up of the attack. The former judge in charge of the initial probe was found guilty for his role in the cover-up. No one ever claimed responsibility for the bombing. And Senegalese President Macky Sall has won a second term in office, picking up 58% of the vote in the presidential election. According to the National Vote Counting Commission, his nearest rival, former Prime Minister Idrissa Seck, took 21% of the vote. The opposition has not commented on the results by the commission, as they're provisional until validated by the Constitutional Council. At least 5 people have been killed and 25 injured after a car bomb exploded in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. According to witnesses, there was an explosion followed by gunshots near a hotel in Maka al-Mukarram Street, and several buildings were destroyed. No one has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. Inspired by the Me Too movement, 2 actresses from France and Burkina Faso are calling for a similar movement in African cinema. They have used the French Même pas peur hashtag, meaning we are fearless, for their campaign. During a film festival, the actresses shared their experiences of sexual harassment during their professional careers. One said she was attacked and disfigured by a film director.
It's everywhere, everywhere, and not only actresses, directors, scriptwriters, technicians experience sexual harassment or even more, sexual assaults, rape. So it was time, and we have a hashtag, not afraid, because fear has to be on the other side now.
It happened on September 30, 2017. On a film set where I was an assistant, the director attacked me with a bottle of beer. He slashed my face.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is to be indicted under corruption charges. According to Israeli TV, the Attorney General wants to charge him in 3 cases over bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. A hearing will take place after the election on the 9th of April, where it's expected Netanyahu will pursue the Attorney General not to prosecute him. He denies any wrongdoing, as his right-wing Likud party described the charges as political persecution. Netanyahu seeks a 4th term in office and has vowed not to resign over the allegations. Indian police has tightened security across Indian states bordering with Pakistan amid rising tensions between the 2 neighbors. Police were seen putting up barricades and cordons by the northern state of Punjab, inspecting vehicles as they drove past. The Indian desert state Rajasthan was also on high alert, with police keeping a watch on sensitive locations and vital installations. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called on his nation to, quote, stand as a wall against any attacks from Pakistan. Addressing his party members through a video conference, Modi told Indians that it's necessary to show faith in their security forces and ensure their morale won't fade. Thousands of Kashmiris have fled their homes due to the latest outbreak of hostilities between India and Pakistan. Leaving everything behind, many displaced people are taking shelter in this Pakistani university. Kashmiris fled after bombs fell across the heavily militarized zone between India and Pakistan on Wednesday.
We left our home in a village at 11 p.m. when heavy shelling was going on. We left behind our home belongings and livestock. We are here for the last 3 days. We couldn't find any transport, but we managed to get here with our children to save our lives.
And now it's time to bring you more stories from around the world.
A Renaissance oil painting, thought to be by artist Caravaggio, has been unveiled in London. This painting depicts the biblical tale of the widow, Judith, beheading the Assyrian general Holofernes to defend the city Bethula. The painting is expected to fetch €120 million at auction. In Algeria, police have arrested dozens of journalists protesting what they call censorship of their coverage of demonstrations against the fifth term in office for the president. Both state-owned and private media journalists joined this protest against reporting restrictions imposed by media house bosses.
Today we organized a sit-in, a peaceful sit-in against the non-constitutional practice that censors the press. Today we want a free press. We want a press that shows reality as it is, whether it comes from those in power to the people or from the people to those in power.
Mexican Saul Canelo Alvarez and his fellow middleweight champion Daniel Jacobs faced off in New York ahead of their May 4th unification bout. For Alvarez, this will be his first fight since earning a technical knockout over Briton Rocky Fielding last month. The fight will be held at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.